presented by Arrowhead Mountain Spring Water. Chris McGee, Robert Horry, James Worthy, Mike Bresnahan. Mike Trudell is out in Minnesota. Lakers lose to the T-Wolves without LeBron James. They turned the ball over 22 times for 27 T-Wolves points. Shot just 38% from the field and 28% from three. And all that being said, James, I'll start with you. Lakers had their chances. We're there up until the end. Just couldn't make plays.
Yeah, I couldn't make plays. And when you turn the ball over, you don't even have an attempt on a play. Turnovers are just awful. You know, you play hard on defense, you get the ball, and then you go down and turn it over. But they did have some opportunities, Peter. Just couldn't hit any threes tonight. Only 5 threes.
Yeah, 5 threes.
Okay from free throws, but the turnovers, that's the thing.
10.
You know, fast break points, they did okay there, but the turnovers, man, it just depletes you mentally, and you don't have a chance to get organized and to get a shot up. Just takes away from the whole morale of the game.
You know, you look back at this game, you had no LeBron, and to me it boils down to, did they have too much time off? Because rhythm is so important in the game of basketball. And especially when you don't have one of your superstars, you need a really good rhythm. You can clearly see Austin Reeves had no rhythm tonight. He started the game off with some silly turnovers, missed some shots, and then he kind of got into his rhythm. This whole team looked like they had been off for like 10 days. Yeah. And to me, sometimes, you know, you talk about how they practice. You got to practice hard. I know he said he did a training camp type of practice. You got to keep that rhythm. And tonight, clearly, they had no rhythm, which caused the turnover. Because you look at those first 3 turnovers you had, the ball hit their hands, and all of a sudden it was like butter all over their hands and lost out of bounds. So clearly, there was no rhythm. Hopefully, that would not happen again.
Yeah, it's not like they had a ton of practice time. They only practiced once since their last game on Sunday. It's obvious that practice time was devoted to defense. I mean, that was the good news. They held a pretty good team offensively under 100. The bad news, Minnesota just has their number. Lakers scored 80 against them last week. Today, 87. I mean, that offense is just, there you go. Check out the two lowest scoring games of the season against the Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, it's a good defensive team, but they're making the Lakers look like, you know, we're playing in the 60s because that offense is just not good, guys. Like you said, Geek shot 38%, and too many possessions short-circuited with all those turnovers. It's just, they got to work on the offense. They're going to have a similar stretch next week with 3 days off, potentially. Got to work on that offense, period.
Yeah, I mean, guys were in there on Tuesday working out, but Wednesday was their one day of practice. Where they went hard and, you know, listen, needed the rest, but it looked like the T-Wolves were a little bit rusty as well. They only hit 9 threes. They shot 28% from 3. But, yeah, the turnovers, guys, definitely sloppy, especially in that first quarter. 11 was the most they've had in first quarter, anyone in the league this year. So they did clean it up a little bit as that game went on. I think that's why that game was evenly played through those final 3 quarters. But they're 3-8 in the last 11 games. You get Rui and D'Lo to struggle a little bit from the field, 6 of 23. AR returns. What do you want to start with, big game, in that little pack?
You know, I agree with Rob. You know, until you get something consistent, you know, even if you practice 45 minutes intensely with a focus, they just don't seem to connect it. You know, when you turn the ball over like that, and you know, some of them were just non-forced turnover. You know, inbounding the ball, you know, lazily, and someone steals it right there under the bucket. So, I don't know. I think they need to have a meeting of the minds and have a conversation first, and then decide on how they want to play and focus on 1 or 2 things. 1, not turn the ball over. 2, you know, obviously defense has been pretty good, but they got to figure out how to execute and get plays and who they're going to go to. You know, I think if you're going to run it through AD, you know, you've been saying that, then you got to run it through him. And that's, you know, that's my take on it.
Yeah, they went a little more defensive-minded, starting Gabe and Max. Max had a good game offensively as well. He had 15 points, 5 of 9, so he did a really nice job getting that start. Gabe as well got the start. Listen, when LeBron's, you know, if LeBron's there, you know,
it'll look better.
There's your triple-double or your 20, whatever he wants to get. Does he want to get 25 that night or does he want to get 20? So when he's not there, you got to find those other scorers, Rob, and they just weren't able to do it tonight. ball just didn't go in the hoop.
Yeah, it didn't go in the hoop. They got some good looks.
I thought they were getting looks.
They got good looks. They didn't knock them down, and that comes to rhythm. You know, I said something about that a little bit earlier. To me, you got to, when you're not in rhythm, and Brez loves for these shoot threes, when you have no rhythm, you got to go downhill. You got to go to the basket. And if you look at Ant-Man, Ant-Man had no rhythm tonight from three, but he was going to the basket trying to get easy buckets. And this team doesn't, outside of LeBron and Rui, they have nobody that's just going to put their head down and go to the basket because nobody has the size enough and the strength enough to rise up over those guys. You know, AR can do it sometimes, but tonight his rhythm was off. And then AD, I know he was like trying to pull Rudy Gobert from the basket because, you know, he's a great rim protector. But sometimes still you need to challenge these guys and hope that you can get a foul call.
Yeah, when they beat Portland like 6 months ago, whenever their last game was, you know, Rui played well, D'Lo played well. Not the case tonight. D'Lo, we talked a lot about him on the pregame show.
Early foul trouble.
Early foul trouble, 3 fouls in the first half. He was 2 for 10. Rob, there's your rhythm that just wasn't there. And Rui, 4 for 13 tonight. So if LeBron's not playing, and if you're going to short-circuit yourself possessions with 22 turnovers, you got to shoot better than 38% on the few possessions you do have. And those two guys just couldn't make shots tonight. It's that simple.
Yeah, he definitely, well, let's talk Austin Reeves. He definitely didn't have his rhythm early on, had those turnovers, but he did settle in big game. It's just nice to have him back. I mean, in those 5 games that he missed, it just was so glaring to not have Austin Reeves and what he brings to this team. He ended up with 18 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds.
Yeah, I mean, you expect him to be a little rusty. I mean, 5 games with not a lot of practice time.
And a headband. He had a headband.
After that tough spill, he was just a little rusty. So, but you know, he played hard, but just didn't have his full capacity after being out. Like Rob said, his rhythm was really off.
Problem for the Lakers, Rob? Look at their next few games. They come back home, good news. They play Memphis on Sunday. That team's tied for second in the West, playing great basketball. After that, you got 2 games at Sacramento. Right now, the Lakers are 10th in the West. Sacramento is 1/2 game behind them. So you got to start locking up these games because you don't want to fall out of the play-in tournament. I know it's only mid-December, who cares? But you just want to have a good feeling going to Christmas. Phil Jackson always said, you can attest to this, Rob, Christmas is when you know what you are. We're only 12 days away from that. And the Lakers, they started off like this. Remember when they were 7-0 at home? Everyone was all excited about Dalton Connect making 9 threes in
right now. What we're going to do, ATO. You know, all these things, the situation, that is, to me, is so important. To me, when you have no LeBron, you really have to be locked in. And I don't think they were as locked in because they said, okay, this is Minnesota. You know, we beat them one time. They beat the brakes off us last game. You should really come in motivated. But it wasn't there for some reason. It's like, I think, to me, and I know I'm old school, but practice is so important when you have a young team that don't know how to play well together.
Can I jump in on that? Because
sure.
JJ told us Wednesday I was there at practice, and I thought it was interesting, especially this day and age in the NBA. It's tough to get a lot of practices. And he said, we have 6 dates this month, which was actually a lot, you know, considering what the date was a couple days ago, to have real practices. So do you think that can help this team big time moving forward?
I know so. I know, because if you think about it, look, Cam Reddish, you know, he hasn't knocked down a shot in a long time, but when he was practicing, he was knocking down shots. You know, and then you get back to the basics because the most important thing when you play in basketball is the little things.
Yeah.
And it's how to come out of a pick and roll, how to defend if you're getting baseline, your rotations. Even tonight, their rotations defensively, one right there. I know they said, oh, we went and worked on practice one time. One time is not enough in the game of basketball. It's repetitive. Everything about basketball is repetitive. That's how you get good. And once you do it, that's how you get great. And this team is doing stuff one time and think it's going to stick. A lot of this goes back to, you know, your upbringing and how you were brought up and the tutelage and the knowledge that you were given as a kid. And it's not there anymore because all these guys don't go to high school. Go to college for 1 year. So it's something that's missing there, and you got to put more thought into it. I talked to a coach, he's going to remain nameless, but he says it's like being in college and high school with these guys because none of them know how to rotate defensively, don't know how to talk because everything has to be taught in college. Now you don't have college. You have to teach it in the pros, which is kind of confusing to a lot of guys. You know, even though AD only did 1 year, but he's a vet and he knows it. But if you look at really,
the guys who've been in the league.
Yeah, if you really look at this team, it's not a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Great points.
All right, well, let's get to the highlights. Lakers in